Gurmago Cancarla, on the 5th of March 2020, you called on me to make my first contribution to the House. The previous weekend, a case of coronavirus had led to a closure of a school in my area. Local councillors and TDs had been briefed in City Hall from what we thought were unknown public health officials, people who the entire country would soon get to know on a nightly basis. I left that meeting incredibly afraid, not just for my community, but for the country. And in a wave, COVID came upon us, upon our community, across the whole country. It changed everything for the 2 years that I've been a member of this House, and it has dominated every aspect of every day. It has taken twists and turns, with its key characteristics being the ability to both surprise and to mutate. As a population, we learned about R numbers and social distancing. We watched as around the world countries struggled with ventilator shortages in New York and Italy, about temporary army hospitals on battleships, about body bags being piled up in corridors. We prayed that those things would not happen here. Every person in this country has bore the burden of COVID, young and old. But those on less income, in poorer housing, in front-facing manual and service jobs have had a harder burden. Those in clinical settings with COVID patients, often who died with them alone, they bore the hardest burden of all. And I want to pay tribute to all those people today. And I want to pay tribute to all those who lost their life. In those 2 years, I have voted for some extraordinary restrictions. Government reaching into people's lives, restricting their movement, their employment, their very contact with family and friends. And I want people outside the House to know that I took none of those votes lightly, and I know ministers in the last government or in the new government took none of them lightly either. In an unprecedented pandemic, there were things that Ireland definitely got wrong. But I've said on many occasions in this House, we've crafted a path that was neither zero COVID zealots nor herd immunity champions. We never put the economy over public safety. We stepped in to help families and businesses financially in a much greater way and for much longer than many other countries did. By treading that middle ground, perhaps we doubled our critics. But this country has got through the last 2 years by balancing restrictions and freedoms. And I believe that this was the right strategy, and I believe it will be vindicated in the course of a full review. I look forward to a full review because I believe we can learn many lessons. And as a member of the COVID committee, I echo the calls for an investigation as to what happened in those early months between primary hospitals and nursing homes. But Ireland did get many things right. It's why we had one of the lowest death rates in Europe, and that's not a statistic, that's people's lives. It's why we had one of the most successful vaccine rollouts. It's why independent analysis ranked us highly in how we balanced restrictions and freedoms. I saw both opposition and government TDs call for this or that to open or to close. I did it myself. We all had good reasons for making those cases and good people who we made them on behalf of. But government had the job of deciding on that balance. Decisions were required, and while some in this House had the role of challenging those decisions, those on this side of the House had a role in making them. They were always made in the interest of the Irish people and their interests alone. As we emerge from COVID, we will have to learn lessons. For me, our reliance on key public services and their importance has been a key learning. Childcare, public health, drug support, education, our caring professions need resources, they need public funding, and importantly, they need public governance. Our return to work. Already, Dublin is seeing increased traffic, increased commuting times. Our city centre is seeing life again, but our urban villages are losing some of the life which it gained. How do we retain that balance that government had to do at a national level? People saved hours of time commuting, hours of time that they gained with their family. How do we challenge ourselves to make sure that we maintain that balance? How can we set targets for those people who work for government itself to make sure that more people are able to work from home? And on travel, God, we've all missed travel. But we discovered some new and old gems here in Ireland. How do we ensure that Irish tourism is the first choice for people travelling abroad? And for international travel, with climate change, our next challenge, we have to ask the question, are we really paying the full carbon cost of international travel and of low flights? There are so many things that we could learn from COVID, but as Deputy Creed said, the COVID challenge, the COVID response meant that we learned how to say yes to solutions and how we could say yes to supporting their implementation. That's the key lesson for me in how we learn from COVID and implement many of the solutions which are identified in the programme for governments. Oh, sorry.